Hello ladies, gents, and everyones. It is Friday, April 15th, and we're here to talk about this week's space and astronomy news. But first, a brief overview of last week's space and astronomy news because I missed it. There was an interesting study of the sounds recorded on Mars by the Perseverance rover. The speed of sound is, as expected, slower than here on Earth, and the planet turns out to be very quiet. Also on Mars, the Curiosity rover was rerouted around some wind-sharpened rocks. These types of rocks, called ventifacts, have already caused damage to the rover in the past. Amazon awarded launch contracts for their internet mega constellation Project Kuiper. They basically went to everyone except for rival SpaceX. Astronomers spotted this object called HD1 that might be the furthest galaxy ever seen at possibly 13.5 billion light years away. Hopefully JWST will be able to confirm. A little closer to home, astronomers may have spotted a Jupiter-like exoplanet in the process of forming. Interestingly, the formation mechanism seems to be closer to the less commonly accepted gravitational instability mechanism. Rocket Lab announced that for their next launch mission, there and back again, they will attempt to do the mid-air helicopter capture of the Electron rocket stage for the first time. This has been done in training, but never for the real thing. And this launch is currently scheduled for April 22nd. A recent Fermilab measurement of the mass of the W boson found that it was slightly off from previous measurements and from predictions of the Standard Model. This could be a sign of new physics, and so we're definitely looking forward to other experiments to see if this is replicated. And if you want to know more about any of these stories, of course there will be links down below. But that brings us to this week's space and astronomy news. Last Friday, the Axiom-1 mission, the first all-private mission to the International Space Station, launched successfully from Kennedy Space Center on board a SpaceX Falcon 9. The Dragon Endeavour spacecraft docked with the ISS on Saturday, and the 4 crew members are now on board the station conducting scientific experiments, outreach, and commercial activities. Fun fact, the mission pilot Larry Connor last May actually made deep dives to the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, making him just the 3rd person ever to go from the depths of the ocean to orbit in space, and the 1st person to do so in less than a year. The mission is scheduled for 10 days and will be splashing down sometime next week, probably April 20th. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson called it a historic launch and one that marks a new era of spaceflight, one with limitless potential. The comet Bernardinelli-Bernstein, it's a little bit of a tongue twister, also known as C2014-UN271, is so bright that astronomers have long suspected that it is quite large. And indeed, a study published this week in the Astrophysical Journal Letters used observations from the Hubble Space Telescope to determine that this comet is in fact the largest comet nucleus ever seen at about 80 miles in diameter. Now, despite this large size, the comet is actually far enough away that even the Hubble Space Telescope cannot actually physically resolve it. Instead, the size is measured by removing the light that is coming from the coma and leaving just the light from the nucleus, and then using estimates of the reflectivity of the comet nucleus, translating that brightness into a physical size. And if you're wondering, well, just how shiny is a comet nucleus? It's actually about as black as charcoal. The comet is currently about 2 billion miles away, and it won't reach its closest approach to the sun at 1 billion miles until 2031, so we have a lot more data to look forward to. Although it has been in our hearts and thoughts, it's been a while since we've had much to report about the James Webb Space Telescope. And out in its L2 halo orbit, the telescope has been continuing to cool down. So the NIRCam, which we saw those amazing images from, had already been cooled down because its operating temperature is 37 kelvins, or about -400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is downright balmy compared to the operating temperature of MIRI, which is about 7 kelvins, or -440 degrees Fahrenheit. But now MIRI, which stands for Mid-Infrared Instrument, has reached that frigid operating temperature. To get to temperatures this cold, you can't just rely on passive cooling from the sun shield like NIRCam did. There's actually an electrically powered cryocooler on board that has been operating to cool down this instrument. NASA announced on Wednesday that MIRI has been cooled to 6.4 kelvins and has passed a series of tests to ensure that it is operating correctly. And now MIRI is in the process of undergoing its own calibration similar to what we saw for NIRCam. This means that all 4 instruments on the Webb are working as expected, and we are on track to start getting science images in the summer. It's really, really exciting. Lastly, we know that Artemis I had been stacked and then last month was rolled out to the launch pad in preparation for its wet dress rehearsal test. Well, that test started yesterday. So all of the SLS systems were powered up overnight on Wednesday, and then on Thursday morning, the go was given to start the tanking procedure, that is, filling the tanks with liquid propellant. Along the way, there was an issue with the gaseous nitrogen pipeline, which was resolved. Then during the liquid oxygen slow fill, a temperature limit was instituted, which was then also resolved. But during the liquid hydrogen fill, there was a pressure surge when switching from the slow fill to the fast fill, and there was a leak identified in one of the umbilicals, and so the test was scrubbed. So this leak is located on the tail service mast umbilical, and the liquid hydrogen tanks were only filled to about 5% before the test was called off. Now, they were able to actually complete the objectives of chilling the fuel propellant pipelines to the upper stage. However, they had already identified an issue with a check valve in that system, so they didn't even attempt to load propellant into the upper stage. As of right now, the teams are draining the liquid propellant from the tanks. They will be investigating the systems and gathering as much data as possible from this test. We don't know exactly what the next steps are going to be. NASA's actually hosting a teleconference this afternoon to discuss it. And of course, our last piece of news is that PhD candidate Nora Bailey successfully defended her PhD thesis on Tuesday, so I guess that's Dr. Nora Bailey. Of course, it won't be official until I get all nice and hooded on June 4th. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Bye!